it's okay to be sad and to grieve, it actually doesn't diminish God's power working in you and through you at all. Like there's something about you, the way God works through weakness, that's incredibly beautiful.
Well, ironically enough, I am actually feeling a lot this morning. It's I know, I'm surprised too. But so I read Psalm 40 this morning, which is I spent some time just reading it and reading specifically Robert Alter's translation, and there's this line. So if you know Psalm 40, it goes, how does it begin? Anybody remember?
I waited patiently.
Yeah, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. And this version is like, I hoped urgently for the Lord, and then it says he bent down toward me and heard me. And I was thinking about that this morning, and then I got in the car and started listening to U2's 40. That's a song based on Psalm 40. And then I migrated over to I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, which just gets me every time. So music is this, it's interesting. I was hoping to maybe talk about it, and here we are. But music has this way of accessing my emotions. I don't have like great control over my emotions, or even like easily willful access to them. I can't just sort of like open up the door of my heart terribly easily. So I have to, but music does that. It gives voice to I feel like really deep things in me that I don't even always know what they are, but it conjures up like feelings, which always, for me, kind of manifests itself in tears. I just wind up in tears. My grandfather was this way. The one I talked about this weekend, who died of Alzheimer's, who was pretty kind of, I wasn't close to. He would, in worship at church, he would just cry. And I can so relate to that. Like, that's what I do. I just cry whenever, and it's not like sad crying. It's just emotions. I can just feel it coming. And it just kind of comes out of me in this kind of involuntary, I don't know if inexpressible is the word, kind of way that I can't always give the most voice to, but I just feel it. And it feels good. It's a good thing. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm feeling a lot.
That's awesome. Do you want to know like the nerdy science behind it? Well, this has a lot to do with like neurology and the way that our brains are. And we've talked about this before. So we're oftentimes operating out of, well, hopefully out of our prefrontal cortex, but the left side of our brain is more of this managerial kind of linear thought side. And the right side is more of this relational, subconscious, like there's memory there. There's things there's meaning. There's a lot of meaning there. And music accesses that right side of the brain. Wow. And so that's why you can't necessarily say, why am I crying? Because it's kind of touching on something that's deeper than your conscious thought, which is really cool. And that's also why singing together, people, they can, well, we'll talk about this more today because we talked about emotions this weekend and feelings, but this idea of regulating your emotions. And so when we talk about managing emotions, really, I think what we're talking about is this ability to regulate. And when people sing together, which I think is such a cool thing that we do as a church, they're able to co-regulate with each other. So it's like everybody kind of getting on the same page with each other emotionally in a space.
I thought of it a couple of weeks ago. I was listening, because I come early to church. We do like a run through, basically, kind of like a play out the whole service. And, I don't like rehearse my sermon, but, the worship team goes through all the songs and stuff. And it's nice for me, honestly. I like to be able to listen to the worship pretty much alone in the room and just kind of react to it that way. And Daniel was singing some song. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have even been like, I worship you, Almighty God, there is none like you, something like that. And it just was, it was getting me. And I was thinking about that. So, there's this verse in Romans that says, for from him, that means the source. Through him, that means he sustains. And to him, that means he's the end goal, are all things, from, through, and to. And it's interesting to me, I was thinking about this, that he has, not only is he worthy of worship, but he also makes worship possible even through our own conscious ability to even relate to him in any way as a gift, but also that he gives us the capacity for emotion and for singing and the gift of music to express back to him love and worship and adoration. Like it's all coming. It's going to him. Mm-hmm. It came from him, and it's being sustained presently by him. And I was thinking about that, like the gift of music. I was just thinking like that we even have such a gift to be able to sing and access. For me, like, what would I be if I didn't have that kind, like, access, like even music as a tool, if you will, or a gateway into. I was listening to, somehow I got onto this. I don't know anything about this guy. I've heard the name, but I've never, as far as I know, ever heard a song. But Jelly Roll, anybody know Jelly Roll?
I've heard of Jelly Roll.
Yes. Yeah, so like there was this thing I saw it was some clip, it just played randomly, because I, like, sometimes I'll drive and like have YouTube. I would rather watch like a interesting YouTube video or hear it than listen to a podcast or something. Anyway, well, I guess it is a podcast, but it was him on Rogan, and he was talking about being in a prison cell and listening to country music. See, he kind of fuses that with his faith, and it's like this hearing this music. And I guess he's a musician, and but how much of that like got him through and out, and he became a member of the Grand Ole Opry, whatever. Anyway, it's a big deal, I guess, and he was pretty emotional about it. But anyway, but I thought, yeah, it's like he was talking about it, like, what would I do without music? And I kind of feel similarly, even though I'm not a musician per se, like, what would I do without the capacity? How stopped up would I be? How like stuck would I be? I don't know. Like, if I didn't have this, regular kind of release. I just had it like last week, or think it was. I was listening to a Coldplay song, Magic, and I was thinking about my son being in Phoenix, and it just got me. I mean, it just, I do this pretty regularly. But I think it's kind of healthy, like, to allow, I can't explain, I don't try to write down or understand necessarily all of those feelings, but it feels pretty good to just let those emotions kind of have a place of expression. And I find that a lot in the church. Like, it helps me every week. I show up and I love the worship part, to just be able to let my emotions kind of go where they want to go, and let that expression happen in a way that I'm not ashamed or embarrassed of, but rather I think connection is what maybe you're talking about there, connection with God.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, and even how the way you're describing music is the way it kind of opens your heart, like getting access to what's in there.
Yeah.
I remember reading Keller's book on prayer, and he was talking, sharing what all these different scholars feel about prayer. And one, I can't remember the name, was talking about how we have to warm our heart in prayer to God. So, like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't know that I feel the most immediately prayerful. I can practice an opening prayer, but reading scripture, worship, I'm doing a lot of practicing worship this year. That's just something that's being added into my routine in the morning. I don't normally play songs in order to get my heart warmed. But we have to have our heart warmed to enter into real conversation with God. And so hearing you talk about music, I think about how our hearts are warmed on the weekend, praying, or, I don't know about you guys, but most often I'm not even mouthing the words to the song. My heart has been opened. I'm praying. I'm talking to God while we're all worshiping together. It just warms my heart to talk and be with my Father.
That is so good, because I think this will be so helpful. I think I often, when I am approaching God, feel nothing. And it's just, there's nothing there. I don't feel like necessarily eager, excited. In fact, often it's kind of like, I'm not going to call it, it's not a drudgery and it's not like a duty, but it is like, I need this, but I'm not feeling it. And singing, even just by myself, singing a song I found does immediately engage my heart in a way that just prayer, often even just like trying to pray the Lord's Prayer, doesn't really do. It's interesting. I prayed the Lord's Prayer this morning, and it was like a constant struggle to get my mind to just show up and be present. I'm wandering this way and that. It's like, I'm halfway through the prayer and I'm off over thinking about whatever, and it's like, come back, and I do. But it's interesting singing that song, those songs, and on my way here, it just engages me in a different way. I think that's really good. I guess what we're talking about is just how do you, this access to the heart, the feelings, the emotions, and that's really where we want to ultimately go today, is talking about our feelings. So this weekend, I was really, what we felt kind of led to talk about was feelings and emotions, which, by the way, you've let me know these are not the exact same thing.
It's true.
So explain the difference real quick.
Okay. So emotions they require a stimulus. So something happens and then you have an emotion. And they're like there's a variation of like how many core emotions we believe we have. And so I think on Inside Out, you have anxiety, or that comes in later, but you start with joy and fear and disgust and anger, and I can't remember sadness. Yeah. So those are it's so good. It is actually so accurate. You can learn a lot about like the way that human beings actually operate based on those two movies. They're very helpful. And then our feelings, what we would call our feelings, are the meaning that we ascribe to the emotion that we experience. And so you might not necessarily recognize, like you might feel fear in your body or anger, but then you would say what you feel is the meaning that you would ascribe to that emotion.
I still don't understand it, but I'm trusting that you and other
people kind of use them synonymously, but
which was what I'm going to do today.
Yeah, which is completely fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the premise that I think we're operating on for the purpose of this series is that your spiritual maturity and your emotional maturity, or health, if you want to put it that way, are inseparable. Does that ring true for both of you in maybe your pastoral or personal experience? That you can't be spiritually mature and emotionally immature. So maybe I'm curious from your perspectives, if I was to ask you, okay, what does it mean to be emotionally immature? Or maybe flip it around, what does it mean to be emotionally mature? How would you describe that?
So one of the things that I really like, Marcus Warner talks about it this way, Jim Wilder, he says that maturity is the ability to endure hardship and remain relational. And so a lot of people really struggle to do that. When the pressure is on, they isolate. And so I think emotional maturity looks a lot like being able to stay relational and to receive care without shutting down.
Is that essentially differentiation?
I You talked about differentiation this weekend. The way that I would, and I think it's interesting because you talked about like this ability to step outside of yourself. And so we do this also in relationships where we're able to maintain an individual identity and stay emotionally connected to the person or the circumstance, whatever that might be. So I think differentiation, the ability to do that, and maturity are definitely connected to each other.
So differentiation we're not talking about detaching, and we're using a lot of terms here, but we're not talking about like severing your heart or feelings. We're just talking about the capacity to, in some sense, be able to examine them or to look at yourself or a particular situation without being dominated by maybe what you presently feel and remain engaged, aware of what I feel nervous, I feel anxious, I feel fear, I feel angry, and to recognize all of that without those emotions just kind of grabbing the steering wheel and, taking you into a ditch.
Yeah, I actually remember one time you and I were talking, and we were talking about something that we were doing around ministry, Church on the Move, and you were asking me some questions, and I remember looking at you and saying, I feel anxious right now. And so bringing it out and saying, because I really want to say the right thing in this moment, but giving voice to that allowed me to stay present in my body and also acknowledge the feeling that I was having in that moment. And so even though my fear could be that somebody who I'm talking to might view that as a weakness for me to admit that I'm feeling anxious.
I felt that this weekend. Yeah. We'll get there at some point, maybe by the story I told at the very end about being nervous to jump up and speak because John Tyson was in the room. I thought about it after the Saturday night service. I was like, that's going to make... I don't want people feeling like sorry for me, and I really don't want... And like I really don't want encouragement. That's what I really don't want. I don't want a bunch of people coming up to me and putting, oh, you're doing so good. I just like, please, I'm a capable person. I am to be taken seriously. I don't want like the Whit little, you're getting there, buddy. Like as if, but to admit that, which was kind of, when I thought of it like that, I thought, maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but I thought better of it. It's like, I think I need to do it. But I knew the risk that goes along with that is that people will look at you like, well, if you really had it, if you were really, strong and capable, you wouldn't feel like that,
I wish because I think
in our minds we think that the real ones don't feel any of those things.
I tend to overshare my insecurities and anxieties just for that reasons because they're a bully, and I want to tell someone I don't know what I feel in this moment. People call it being real. But I find that if we're all being human and being real, I just really appreciate when people name stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think of it as weakness. I think of it like connecting with others.
You said a bully. So do you mean that, because I think I can relate to that.
Like feelings unexpressed. Are going to take you somewhere.
Yeah.
And they tend to, like fear, anxiety, they can bully you and you tend to isolate, go the other direction.
So by talking about them, you kind of cut
their power out.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think that's really...
Yeah, not the most popular thing as a leader or a pastor to go, man, I'm feeling this. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think we can talk about this, like where you do that and with whom, I think is important.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of first point that I was making this weekend was that feelings are a gift from God. Yeah. Just a basic kind of establishing. And what occurred to me is it's part of our image bearing. I shared a lot of verses that just describe God with emotions. I don't want to spend a ton of time here, but just I think what it would be good to affirm is that our feelings, emotions, if we want to go to that and maybe use the term emotions, positive, and this was what I really made effort to emphasize on Sunday, positive and negative are all from God. In the list that I had, fear, God has not given me a spirit of fear. No, Pastor Whit, I don't have fear. Well, fear, like there's a good fear. Without any fear in your life, you may do some really stupid things that you kind of should have some fear and go, that could hurt me. Or if I don't protect myself in some way, like, do you lock your doors at night? Do you, like, there ought to be, there's some awareness of threats around you. And without that fear of those potential threats, healthy fear, you may open yourself up, or people that you love, unwittingly to harm that, could do real damage. But let's just maybe talk just about this for a second, like feelings or emotions being a gift from God. Any thoughts you have on that, or anything you want to add to that, just to affirm that in any way? Or is that just so
feelings are part of how I experience my relationship with God, and it's how I experience my relationship with others. So good and bad, isn't that how I experience life to the full?
I totally
how I
think
experience
that's right. Yeah.
If we are to rejoice unto the Lord, delight in the Lord, those are all emotional expressions. We're told to love the Lord our God with all of who we are. Love, that's an effective.
Well,
it's
also
a
with all your heart,
thing.
all your soul.
So
I used on Saturday. I didn't use it on Sunday, but yeah.
So to me, this is the essence of what it means to be human.
Yes.
But there's also a lot about what it is to do with all of those emotions. But
and I think it is part of emotions. How can you be in relationship with someone really without emotions? I don't know that it's possible.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. There would be no depth to that relationship. It would be very pragmatic. It would be quid pro quo, like transactional almost. Like you get, like, what can I get from you? And not in an emotionally satisfying way, in a way of...
And we do that in our relationship with God.
I mean,
we do that in our relationship with God and others.
So I do think that I like the way Chip Dodd talks about feelings as lanterns or like passwords. And so if you can identify what you're feeling, then it gives you some insight into what's going on in your heart. Wow. And I think that for a lot of people, you have a hard time assigning meaning to the emotion that you're experiencing at the time. And so a lot of people, when they're thinking about their feelings, they're like, oh, that feels like that's scary. Wow. Because they associate it, one, with what was acceptable in my family of origin.
Yes.
For some families, it was not acceptable to be angry or sad.
Yes.
And so you're
only
thinking
positive emotions.
Only positive emotions, and then you're also realizing that emotion, it starts in your body. So if it comes around like Cousin Eddie. Cousin Eddie. Then it's something you experience in your body, and it can be kind of like alarming the first time you're saying, "Why are my hands sweaty?
Yeah.
Why do I want to run away right now? And why do I have this like feeling of like my stomach is dropping?" And so that's scary, and you feel like you're going to be out of control of whatever that is. And so we tend to push it down. But I'm reminded of the proverb that says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs life. And that word guard means to just watch what's going in and what's coming out, because your heart is valuable.
Right.
And so you guard the things that matter. And so guarding it means like, I'm going to keep watch over this, but our feelings are a way of keeping watch over our hearts.
Interesting. So I think for the purpose of this discussion, again, helpful to just recognize the feelings and emotions that you have these are something that God gifted you with, positive, negative, whatever your relationship to them has been in your past, from your family, maybe from your church. I know, depending on your church tradition, some people feel like they can't give any voice to certain feelings, especially negative ones, because then it's like speaking something into existence. It's this weird new agey manifesting. You're opening the door. I don't buy any of that. I think there is, I think what we say with our mouth matters, but not in the sense that somehow I'm going to speak this evil thing over me necessarily. That's like becomes like a curse. It's a very strange theology that people have around that stuff. But I do think I do think that you can take some of this too far, but awareness of it, at least starting there, acknowledging that these are feelings that God has given me, and I'm feeling them for some reason. Okay, the second thing that I talked about was just that that your feelings have a mind of their own. Now, this one I think is a bit more revelatory. And kind of got me thinking this, like that your feelings, the way I describe it is feelings show up uninvited. Or another way I said it Sunday was you have no control over what you're going to feel and when you're going to feel it. You don't get to dictate your feelings. Now, I think the key to this is, because I can feel immediate pushback from some people as if I'm saying I have no control over my feelings. That's not the case. You do. But what you feel and when you feel it are not entirely within your control. You cannot like flip a light switch and make yourself feel happy. If we could, depression wouldn't be a problem. Or you can't flip a switch and make yourself feel sad or anxious or any of those things. Certainly your choices, like the way you live your life, Blake talked about this, maybe your sleep habits or the food you eat or the pattern of living, looking at a screen, like all of those things can contribute. So you can kind of create, if you will, the conditions for anxiety or depression or joy or happiness, right? Those things can be created, like you can move in that direction, but you can't conjure it up at will. Feelings emotions tend to show up. And, it's again, like the story that I described, anxiety just shows up. I just feel it. Or like what you were saying, anxiety in a conversation that we were having just shows up. You're not intending for this to happen, but here I am and I'm feeling all of this. And it happens all the time. So I'm curious, experiences with that, thoughts around that. I'm just curious your reaction to it.
Yeah, feelings have been uninvited friends many times in my life. Because I didn't know how to name feelings, especially in my 20s. I had dealt with anxiety at various times since childhood. Couldn't have named it, couldn't have told you what it was, but something that deeply affected me. And so it wasn't until I found words for what that was. It felt like something that was happening to me. My feelings are doing something to me, and I just was at their mercy. And it was actually later, I forget what book I had done so much reading in Christian books trying to understand what was happening in me. It was a non-Christian book that was like, you need to name what you're feeling. And I was like, oh, and like, wow, what freedom when you just name what you're feeling. But yeah, they come on you. Wow. Grief, that was another one that I dealt with. I've lost people, but I'd never lost a parent. I'd never lost someone that close to me. And I remember my dad, like maybe 4 years ago or so, goes on hospice. And I'm here at the church and I'm working, and it was like a declining heart condition. So, no idea how long it's going to be, but hospice is going to be a great part of our strategy to care for him in this period. But my experience with my dad throughout my life was he had dealt with addiction, a lot of emotional struggles, and a lot of physical struggles. So my experience with him is like, oh, we're at the hospital again. Oh, doctor, is this something I need to be concerned with or not? I'm just so accustomed to the chaos that comes with that, that I don't assume anything different about him entering hospice. And I'm here at work.
Wow.
And I'm with my peers at a big meeting, and I'm feeling some things, but who knows what they are. And someone I deeply respect asked me a question in front of everyone, and just like, nah, I'm not interested today. It was so dismissive and rude. And I just kept noticing these things with my peers and coworkers that I was like, I felt like I was leaking out, like they were coming out sideways and I couldn't figure it out. And so I make an appointment with a counselor that I know. We have a relationship, and I just showed up and say, hey, just wanted to talk. I have a lot of I don't know, a lot of just, I'm acting out. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like I can't kind of I call it keeping it tucked in. And she's like, oh, okay, let's talk about it. How have you been? I was like, well, my dad went on hospice, but that's actually not what I'm here to talk about. And I just start telling her all the other things that we need to talk about. And she, like a counselor ninja, lets me just get all that's in my heart out. And we come full circle to, Angela, at the end of the day, you are still a daughter who's losing a dad.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. All these other, and I was just like, you knew that we were going to do this the whole time. She's like, yes, I did. But I'm just like, and now I understand how messy grief is. Grief just comes out really messy, and it's going to look like anger, sadness. It's going to look like a lot of messy things, and that's okay. Don't wear the mascara. Be prepared to cry at a moment. And that's what it means to walk through it.
Yeah, and so when you felt like when that connection was made, what happened in you emotionally? Did that trigger
release?
Yeah.
It triggers release. For me, I tend to guard against vulnerability. That would be me growing up and growing mature is learning how to be open and vulnerable. That's not a shock to anyone. That's all of us. But that was a much longer journey for me because I'm usually the strength in the room. I'm usually the strong one in the family. I'm usually the one people are looking to. So for me, it's taken a little bit to learn how to it's okay to be sad and to grieve. And it actually doesn't diminish God's power working in you and through you at all. Like there's something about you, the way God works through weakness, that's incredibly beautiful. That I'm not stronger for keeping it in. I'm not stronger for trying to hold it together. In fact, strength is being able to cry. It's being able to be vulnerable and express. This is what it means to be human, but we're walking through it with the Lord. He is the good counselor. He is counseling me through it,
My dad said something interesting to me after the Saturday night service this weekend, just kind of where he come from in his sort of faith background and journey and so forth, that a lot of the people in the movement he was a part of, they had no, however he put it, no category really for the Psalms.
Yeah.
Because the Psalms are just filled with emotion and the language of emotion. I think Job is that way as well. And you're like, in reading these, I think it's why they're so wonderful to have as a part of your regular kind of devotion to the Lord. Is it gets you not, I would say to anybody listening to this, just like, I love Paul. It's great to read Paul and these theological treatises and trying to understand what these words mean and all of it. But then there's also just the cry of the heart that you find in the Psalms that I really need it.
Yeah.
And I don't always understand what I'm reading. I can't always easily, like I said, I don't have, I'm not the most connected to my emotions, but I think that's why I need this book so much. I keep coming back to it. It's part of my kind of daily ritual of
it's just a non-negotiable. I have learned more about honesty with the Lord in Psalms than anything else.
Yeah.
They are such good teachers on how to experience the full range of emotions and honestly get them out before God. Because I'm probably more of that upbringing where it's like it's not faithful to say the opposite of what God has called me to. No, I do not have fear. So I just say that over and over again.
Yeah.
But to come before the Lord, who is a tender, loving Father, and say, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen today.
Yeah.
But I know that you're with me.
Yeah.
That is honest connection. I think we would talk about what it is to stay attached to the Lord and in connection.
How can perfect love cast out fear that you're not willing to admit that you have?
Brilliant.
I love that. And it's so true.
Yeah. Acknowledge.
My God, why have you forsaken me is a cry from Psalm 22 that Jesus cries on the cross. And there's interesting theological questions. Does the Father really turn his face away from the Son? A lot of, or some teaching would indicate so. Some of our songs. I think it's debatable, and I'm not really here to have a theological discussion around it. I think what's most interesting is that whether it's true or not, it felt that way. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's the point of emotions, is just acknowledging it. There's an honesty to emotions that don't have to be completely accurate. And I think that's the point that so many people get hung up on but it's not actually fully logically, demonstrably true.
Yeah.
Heather said something to me this week. She was like, and we had to talk about it around bigger than just what I'll get into now. But she was like, "You're spending, all this time with, your friend," and I mean, I was like, "Wait, what? You went to coffee with him today? You went to dinner with him or whatever?" And I was like, and I wanted to just be like, "But I was at dinner with you last night and the night before, and we've been doing." But everything in me wants to bring out the a record or get a calendar. Let me show you. But it isn't about what I can demonstrate. It's about what it feels like. Now, this is, I think that the trick with this, and people like me, I think as well, can I think there is a truth to we can't just assign ultimate truth to feelings just because you feel it. We have to be really careful there, and I think that's kind of where we've gone with sort of even the whole affirming ideas. If you feel it, we just got to affirm it and act like that's true. I think that's ridiculous. But I also think there's a ditch on the other side where it's the denial of feelings. Heather used to say to me, "It feels like you spend all the money on yourself," and it's wait, what? Can we get out a the budget. Let's see who's spending what where. You're doing your fair share, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't really about tit for tat. It was about the fact that she felt no real agency when it came to our money. Mm-hmm. And so the way that got fixed was just giving her a checking account. It was just okay, here's do what you want with this. This will be you're just having an allowance of some and so that was all she was trying to express, but I couldn't hear it because I'm hearing it through these kind of wounded, if you will, feelings that are rather incomplete and not painting the full picture on the surface. Feelings, it's like poetry. It's the same way. I read Shakespeare. I don't read Shakespeare. I have read some Shakespeare. Or I have read poetry, and I'm just I got no idea what any of that means. I just want it to be straightforward. But that's why I like the Psalms. It forces me to engage a different part of myself and to ask questions and go, what is that saying there? And it's done in such a weird way to me. It's such a counterintuitive way. But it forces me to consider, maybe I try to access my feelings through my mind to think about what does that mean so that I can then, I see what you're saying. I see what you're putting,
Well, even what it requires to slow down. And I think about what you were saying about a song. And with a song, you're saying the words over and over again. You're letting the words, the phrases roll off of your tongue. Don't you have to do that with a psalm? You have to get in it. You have to let the lines just kind of roll through your mind. It isn't enough for me to just open a psalm and read it one time. I really have to get in it in the way that I would think about a song and sing it over and over again.
Interesting.
So we had an assignment for school because I'm going to Biola right now, and they assigned us to read all 150 Psalms, but not just to read them, but to pray through them. And so what we often do, and what I think in the tradition that I grew up in, which is very similar to your dad's, is we open the Psalms and we look for a good one. And we look for one that's if I'm thinking, well, I need to do my Bible reading today, but I'll open my open the psalm. I'll be like, I'll read a psalm. That'll be nice. And then I'll be like, okay, Psalm 4, be angry and do not sin. That's not the one that I want. I would like, where is Psalm, oh gosh.
23?
34. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth.
You're right.
And I was reading through all the Psalms, all 150, and I got to one that was expressing some anger one day. And I was sitting, like, having my quiet time. I was like, okay, I'm going to pray through this because this is what I've been assigned to do. And by the time I was done praying through that psalm, it wasn't that I went searching for anger somewhere. It was the recognition that, oh, wait, I had some anger that I had up to that point been unwilling to admit that I had. And so I think that that's the beauty of the Psalms. There's 40%, I think, of the Psalms are lament. They're this kind of crying.
I thought it was like 2/3, actually.
It's, well, maybe.
Depends on who you ask, I assume.
Yeah, I don't know.
What you want to define as lament. It's a lot of them.
But
yeah,
a lot.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. So if you're doing that little game where you're like trying to point at a psalm and find a good one, then your chances are pretty high that you're going to stumble on something that you didn't anticipate.
Because the feelings, like the lines in the Psalms, they feel so extreme sometimes. Like, vindicate me, Lord.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, have you ever felt the need to be vindicated? Has someone ever said something about you? That's where it drew me in. I felt like it gave me language to pour out to the Lord in ways that I haven't ever allowed myself.
Yeah.
Vindicate me.
So really kind of the hinge point of the whole sermon was this idea that your feelings need to be managed. That was really what we were there to talk about. And the kind of two-step process, I guess, that I offered from Psalm 42, which is, why so downcast, O my soul, put your hope in God, is contained in essentially those two lines. First is recognition, which is allowing yourself to think and acknowledge, what am I feeling? Like, what's going on here? And that may take some, like, with you, sitting down with a counselor or maybe a friend or maybe in your prayer time, whatever, like you just described, oh, there's anger here. I didn't know it was here. That would be recognition, acknowledgement, and then trust. Or you could say the second word I gave was direct. So you have to direct it. So when you have a feeling, it has to go somewhere. What are you going to do with this feeling? And you said something earlier, so I changed it. I don't know if you saw it on Sunday, this chart that we all have here that I got from you. And essentially at the top where I had the arrows pointing, so the feeling in the middle, fear, anger, hurt, sadness, loneliness, there's others. The feelings in the middle, it can go one of two directions. And I changed it from unhealthy and healthy to isolation and relationship. Because it dawned on me, like, that's really what we're talking about here. Your feelings turned inward toward isolation, either through suppression, just stuff that down and let's not admit that. I don't even want to talk about it. Can't go there. Maybe it's too painful. Maybe I'm not allowed to do that. Maybe strong people don't feel whatever I'm feeling. No thanks. That it's still internalizing. It's still isolating. It's still holding on to it. When I do that, the outcome is just really bad. So this is the problem, is that a lot of our relational dysfunction that results in spiritual immaturity, us being our inability to deal with our insecurities, our inability to forgive, our inability to remain in relationship. We run, we bounce, we move from here to here to here. We never settle. Like, you can imagine a host of outcomes that would really thwart someone from becoming like Christ are often the result of basically us internalizing or isolating our emotions, and then those having all kind of negative outcomes, versus the other direction, which is to turn or direct those feelings back into relationship, which is what the psalmist is doing. Why so downcast? He's examining himself, which requires this kind of stepping outside. We could talk about that. And then directing his heart or his soul. Put your hope in God. Turn it back this direction. And so you're directing it back into relationship. So yeah, we can kind of take that wherever y'all want to go with it. But that's kind of how, that was sort of what I wanted to help people understand, is that your emotions kind of go one of two directions, away from relationship or toward relationship. And in my experience, the folks that, I see a lot of brokenness and dysfunction, they tend to isolate.
I think one important thing to keep in mind when you talk about isolation and moving towards relationship is that all human beings were made for relationship.
Yeah.
And if we don't believe that, then we're going to have a really hard time with this whole idea.
How would we not believe that? Tell me how do you experience that maybe with relationships, friends, or pastorally, where people maybe wouldn't say, I don't believe that, but functionally they live as though that's not true?
Yeah, I would say that, this is hard because there's so much that we could get into. And I think that if we get into talking about guilt and shame, we'll touch on it a little bit. But what I think a lot of us do is we treat relationships as accessories to the life that we're trying to build. And so we'll think, whether we would admit it or not, we think life is about finding purpose or success or what I can accumulate, the house that I have, the car that I drive, not having any fear or concerns, isolating myself from any kind of vulnerability. And so thinking that I'm made for relationship feels a little like it feels ooey gooey. It feels not tangible to a lot of people, and because they don't know how to do it in a healthy way. And so to say to somebody to move towards unhealth is to move towards isolation, they would say, well, that's the way I've kind of always done things. And it's protected me thus far. And so to recognize that you're made for relationship might be a completely new thought for some people. Made for relationship with God and made for relationship with others. And,
so you're talking about people who maybe never learned. What might be other reasons? I was thinking about those who it's burdening others. They're used to like sort of a self-reliance sort of thing. So haven't
you hear
learned.
that all the time. Well, I'm sorry for dumping all this on you. I don't want to be a burden.
As if there was some other way you were meant to experience your feelings. Now, granted, you can do it at the wrong time in the wrong way and with the wrong person. There's a lot of caveats to that, but we have a self-reliance culture, I feel like. I don't know if it's the American way or what it is, but a lot of that. I just kind of struggle with it alone.
It's a pioneering spirit that in so many ways is good because you're taking new ground, hopefully for people to come along behind you and experience the ground that you've taken. But a lot of times it's done in isolation for the sake of whatever that goal is out ahead. But we don't realize that it's so that it can be enjoyed together. Because when God talks, when we're talking about shalom, it is right relationship in all things, right relationship with creation, with purpose, with each other, with ourselves, and with God.
So it's a good thing, you'll sometimes hear people say you have to be able to stand alone. And I think that's right. I think you do have to be able to stand alone. But I think we also should recognize that isn't the goal. Standing alone isn't the end game. I must be willing to separate myself from you. That's what differentiation is to say, well, even in the face of your displeasure or your anger or whatever it may be, I have to, this is what has to be done. I've got, maybe that's drawing a boundary, having a confrontational conversation or whatever, or setting a limit, whatever the case may be. I mean, and some folks like really struggle with that, can't say no. There was a story that was shared, a testimony at the Brotherhood or the Forming Men conference of a guy who just, when he was a kid, kind of his place in the family just sort of learned to comply. And his dad one day told him, man, I just love how you're so easygoing. That's what I love about you. And he just took that and turned it into like a way of being for like his whole life. And so he had no opinion on anything, would go like just do whatever anybody else. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm easy. I'll do whatever you want. Would never speak up. And it got to where like his wife just really did not like this, really did not like the version of him, this just kind of whatever you want. Like she wanted him to be a man and actually stand up for some things and have an opinion and so forth. So it took some real work. And when he started doing it, it felt really uncomfortable. So like we're not talking about just relationship at the expense of an identity or a self. You have to be willing to stand alone. That's the differentiation part of it. But also, I think recognizing that isn't the goal. In other words, the goal isn't like me surrounded by riches and pleasures and all I want, and if nobody else need be there as long as I'm getting what I'm after. I think we we understand this like at funerals and so forth. It's like the relationships. No one at a funeral, at least I've never been to a funeral where anybody said, when Ron died, he had X amount of dollars in his savings account. No one has ever stood up to say that. He had so much money. It's incredible. And we ought to remember him for that. Like no one says that. They talk about relationships. They talk about how they experienced you and what you did and how there was connection and like if there was. Like that's the stuff that we remember.
We don't regret. I wish I would have worked more.
Yeah, no one ever says that.
Wish I would have put in more hours on the job.
I wish I'd had a nicer car or whatever.
There's a study that was done at Harvard that talks about quality of life and longevity of life, and relationships is the primary indicator of those things, like how much you enjoy your life in your latter years, and actually how long you live has a lot to do with the quality of relationships that you have.
So we're talking about feelings and how we turn them back toward relationship. And you were saying that there's folks that we just don't, we end up pursuing other things.
Yeah, but we were made for healthy relationships.
With God and with others. Because there's a ditch on either side to that even. Like where you move towards God but never towards others. Or you move towards others with your feelings and never towards God. Like even that idea of standing alone. You can stand alone because you are dialed in with God and you've done business with him. So you're not standing alone, But, just thinking about how we can just go one or the other.
That reminds me of the Pete Scazzaro kind of line. Sometimes we use God to avoid God. And so, and it's getting back to some of what we were talking about with honesty with God, but just kind of even saying, well, I took my sadness or whatever to the Lord and we dealt with it together, and I never have to share it with anyone else. I never have to tell anyone else that I was sad. And I did that for a very long time in my life. I probably didn't start actually sharing feelings with people until my mid-30s.
Which is really helpful.
What? Why?
Just that whole idea. Because, I've discussed it with, it's just drawing out the idea that yes, with God, but also with others.
Yeah. So, and there was a lot of breakthrough that happened for me right around the time I was 35, 36, and I started really stepping into a vulnerable place in my relationships with people, but it was terrifying. And I had been praying for most of my life, like, God, I really want some good friends. And part of that was I wanted people in my life who could also relate to the depth of relationship that I had with the Lord. And I just didn't feel like I wanted somebody that I could look at and say, you too, like, that's your, like, you want that kind of relationship with the Lord too, and to go there together. But that wasn't happening until I chose to take a risk and to talk to people. Funnily enough, the first thing I started talking to people about was around shame, which I don't know if we're going to talk about that today.
Well, that may be, so what is it? Maybe that's the answer to this question. I have a hunch that it is. What drives us to turn our feelings inward? Why do we move so easily, readily toward isolation with our feelings? Why do we do that? Do you know?
I would say that there's a lot of shame associated with our feelings.
Yeah.
And again, this goes back to the garden, Genesis 3. Hiding. Well, yeah, God comes to Adam in the garden and he says, "Where are you?" And he says, "I was hiding because I was afraid." So actually, him admitting that he was afraid is pretty good. But it's what he should have done when he first felt that initial fear, rather than hiding, moving towards relationship with God.
Yeah.
And so what we have a tendency to do is hide from
Not just tendency, it's like a universal.
It is,
I mean, a child does this without being taught.
Yeah. And
they hide it immediately.
And we also have a tendency to cover. And so to pretend like we're okay. So we might look at it this way. Hiding is, I'm not going to let a person know me, because if I let someone know me, then I could get in trouble for that. Or I'm going to cover myself with actions or behaviors or a kind of performance that becomes acceptable to whoever I'm showing up to in the moment. And so both of those things are a way of protecting the things that are the feelings that we have, maybe that we feel are unacceptable or won't be well received by someone else, including God.
Yeah. Make you look weak. Yeah. Make you look. Yeah, I think that's a big one for men. It's just that if I talk about this, it's going to make me look. You're going to look like a loser, like you can't handle what's wrong. Guys are going to look at you like something's terribly wrong with you, that sort of thing. It's even what I was talking about this weekend or earlier was just that sharing that I was nervous before a sermon in front of a guy that I respected is, you're taking a risk in sharing that because it makes people, at least internally, the dialogue is it makes people look at you like you're less than somehow. That if you really had it together, you wouldn't feel those things. That the man of God that I respect is, this kind of superhero who doesn't feel anything or is not vulnerable. So let's talk about this chart for just a little bit and maybe take a look at it. So did you have one or you got one there? So we talked about it this weekend. This chart comes from Chip Dodd is where it comes from as far as I can tell. And in the center, so Lindsay, how are we going to, will this go show notes or?
Yes, it'll be in the show notes, and we will also have it on the blog that's attached to this. So
nice.
There's a link.
Okay, cool. So in the center, you have 8 feelings, and maybe there are only 8 feelings, and maybe there are more. Let's not get too hung up on that. But what you can see is that there's the feelings in the center, and then essentially to the right, you've got moving toward relationship and what happens with that feeling when you move toward relationship. And then on the left, you've got what happens when you tend to isolate. I thought what might be helpful is just talking through a few of these in ways that kind of help unpack, because some of these words aren't exactly clear. It's hard to understand what they mean without a little bit of explanation. So anybody got a favorite on here you want to unpack that's let's talk about that one? That would be
a favorite feeling.
Well, I mean, just one that you're like.
really love that sadness one. That was really good.
Okay, let's go there. Sadness.
Okay.
So when you feel sadness, basically the way that it sort of shows up on here is that to the side of sort of taking it internal is self-pity and ultimately resulting in demand. And I talked to you a little bit about this, Casey, before I preached this weekend. I didn't even get into this because we just didn't have time. I was curious about that word demand. So I think what's interesting to note is you're going to see at the top, it calls it internal impairment and then relational isolation. Honestly, these headings are quite confusing. Internal impairment just means like when I take it inward and what the sort of negative action that happens inside of me, self-pity, woe is me, the world is against me, or whatever. I never get, no, they never. It's kind of what I was talking about, that always and never, and taking to extremes your feelings. But then that manifests itself in demand. What are we talking about there? How does that show up?
Yeah. So if we think about sadness going to self-pity, it becomes something that it's not supposed to be.
Okay.
And then demand shows up in your relationships. So you begin to experience self-pity. You feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
But then you demand that others feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
And it becomes...
It can happen through manipulation.
It can become manipulative in the way that you are saying, look at my life. My life is so sad. And so this sadness that or the loss that you're unwilling to grieve, you try to pass on to someone else to say, you need to grieve for me because my life is so sad. And it's very demanding. Yeah.
What's interesting is I think I could see how that would lead, because I remember this happening. So after a friend passed away several years ago, we were at the hospital. He's on staff, and it was a heavy thing. And we're there kind of sort of loving on, and I was close to this guy, really loved him, and good friend of mine. But we're there sort of ministering, Heather and I, just to a lot of other people that are also hurting. And I have to lead, it's like, I've got to let the staff know, just like he was a public figure for us. And so, this has to be, someone has to talk about this and write something about this. And so, that was my responsibility. And I'm in my office that afternoon just writing up a post, and I'm feeling all of this. Now, Heather, who is so good at ministering to people in their pain and so forth, hospital chaplain, not at that point she hadn't been, but could have been. That's just how, her ability to do that. And now I look at it, so I'm feeling sadness, but it's coming on me slower. It doesn't hit me suddenly when I learn the news of his passing. I kind of feel, I don't feel, I'm sad sort of mentally, but not here yet.
You're probably in shock a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it takes a little while, but as I start writing this Instagram post and let people know that he's passed, I'm just feeling all of this stuff. And Heather's kind of coming in and out of my office and just not recognizing at all that I can see that I'm sad. So sadness turns to self-pity. I'm sad here. And I want her to do for me what she'd been doing for everybody else, but she's not. And then that turns to hurt. I'm wondering if these emotions can lead one into the other, so I'm sad. I'm feeling pity for myself. I'm hurting too, and nobody's seeing me. I want you to feel for me. And all of this is happening kind of deeper inside, but she's not. And then finally it just kind of blows up into anger, which is like, why aren't you for me? And she was like, I didn't think you were sad. You seemed fine. And I was like, well, I'm not, And she came over and gave me a hug, which is what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, it's interesting how that works. Like, these feelings turned inward, they just kind of stack. Sadness, self-pity, hurt, ultimately. Like, it's interesting. Hurt becomes revenge, and I'm mad at you, and all of this. It's interesting.
And underneath that is potentially fear that that you're not going to be seen or known or loved.
Yeah, exactly.
In that moment, and then you're just like, why won't you do this? And it can turn into there's so much there, and in that moment where you're experiencing sadness, it would have. Rather than saying they should just know. They should just know that.
That happens all the time. Why do we do that?
We do. We're like...
We do that.
And
I don't want to say anything about it. I want you to see it.
Yeah.
It's
and
not
I want
gonna
you to ask me.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to express sometimes. If you're new to expressing a feeling to someone or trusting someone with the feeling. So then it's like, it would be so much easier if you could just figure it out. And I don't have to say.
But there's something too about that, because I think like, particularly with sadness, let's just talk about that for a second. I think there's this like kind of morsel quality to it. I use that word in an interesting, like, what I mean is it becomes savory. Like something to, in a kind of way, inwardly treasure your pain. And then I know what it is. I'm sad. But I so quickly, like, rather than truly grieving that sadness, I turn it very quickly to self-pity, which becomes like this cultivating thing. You know what I mean? Like, I cultivate it. I think a lot of these feelings, we do this. When they're turned inward, I think it is like Gollum. A little bit like
that's
my
what
precious.
I thought of. You said morsel.
That's exactly who I was thinking of. Because it's like I'm now like treasuring this thing, like my pain. I'm working it around, and it's not even that I'm enjoying it exactly. There's a sick, twisted, strange satisfaction in it, but I'm working it around. And I think that's why I don't want to say anything to you, because that would rob me of the kind of control I have over this whole thing.
Your control, and also your specialness in some ways.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like, no one experiences a pain like I'm experiencing.
Yeah, and I want you to see it.
Self-pity is very, like, I'm very special.
Oh, that's gross. Goodness. That is so gross.
I know, but we do it.
It's true. I'm just sitting here marveling, trying to figure out why we do that. And because one of the things that strikes me about this chart and what you said was like, what I really needed was a hug.
Yeah.
And when you look at this chart and these feelings, the whole idea is if a feeling is an indicator, it's an indicator of a need. And I don't know that we immediately think of feelings as indicators of something I need outside of myself. Oh, it's just something I'm experiencing and it's happening to me. But this would say that I could go, man, I feel sad about this. I have a need here, and know that I need to go to God with it or go to someone else with it.
Yeah. And I think that the idea of specialness is that we are terrified that if we expose ourselves or the vulnerable side of ourselves to another person, that they are not going to in turn say, you are valuable enough to comfort. You are important enough for me to lay down whatever I'm doing and embrace you in this moment.
And that's real.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
And so we hold on, I think, inwardly to hurt, sadness, anger, loneliness, sort of waiting for the other to get and respond in just the right way. I think, like, so not wanting to go too off on a tangent here, but I do think this is part of the danger of, again, like, not my field or like area of expertise in any way, but what happens a lot of times, I think more for women than for men, but I think men with pornography, but women with these books that describe a man in such a way that it's like he gets what I am and who I am and all of this. And then your husband can never match. And so nothing is there. So everything becomes mechanical, like any action that he makes, it's like, it's not enough. Forget it. You're never going to, do you know what I'm saying? And so I think we treasure, like we hold on to these things, and we keep people that we really should be loving and in relationship with at a distance. I think that's what, I know we're not talking about like pornography and how it like objectifies and then like pushes away true intimacy. But it's a similar thing. It allows me to harbor a kind of sinful desire, feeling, lust, and it cuts off relationship rather than invites it in.
It made me think of people having relationships with AI.
So we should talk about this, because I did not even realize how much this is happening right now.
A lot. Yeah. People are going to AI for their therapy and for companionship. And no wonder no one else or no other human relationship would be adequate for them, because they're showing up, and
this is scary.
And there's no risk involved in you being vulnerable with AI in your mind, because AI is never going to reject you. It's programmed to not reject you and say, that's stupid, you shouldn't.
Have you? So I found myself, I assume we've all used it in some way or another, and it's really amazing in so many ways. Like its usefulness is really incredible. But part of the Thomas Aquinas stuff that I was doing, the Four Idols and all, I'm using AI to kind of help me understand Aquinas and synthesize some ideas that I was wanting understanding on. And I'm asking questions. I assume you feel that, and it's just like, that's a really insightful question.
I've never had someone ask
like, I'm
that
actually
before,
really smart here.
That's so
this
smart.
AI is going, wow, not everybody uses me like you do. But this is really good. You're asking.
You are one of a kind.
You are something, and you feel that. And I mean, I got something here. Yeah. It's incredible.
If AI ever gasses me up, I'm going to be like, liar. You are a liar. Which I
had to tell you, I was charting some food, what I was eating yesterday with AI, because I'm trying to work out my macros on some things. And it told me you should do it this way. And then after I ate, I was like, well, I actually did this way, which was a fail. And it's like, that's okay. That's okay. We get back up. And I was just like, whoa.
I told mine, I was
AI's
doing the same
encouraging
thing.
me
And I
my
told mine, I need
macros.
you to be brutal with me. I don't want you to encourage me.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'll try. And then every time it was still like, and just because I know you need to hear this, you're doing okay. It's like, get away from me.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should just to put that forward. That's not real relationship.
No.
Yeah.
And I just, to anyone who might be listening that is utilizing, I would say that is a very slippery slope, and I would not go down that road at all. What advice, by the way, would either of you give to anybody that's maybe dabbled in that or is in the midst of using AI as an emotional?
I have given this advice.
Go ahead.
Get chat off your phone immediately. Get it off immediately. If you find yourself in an area where you are depending on chat instead of the Lord and the Holy Spirit, that is moving you into a very dangerous place. And it's like, detox, get out of it immediately. There's nothing you need knowledge-wise to know more than you need to be present with the Lord. So get it off immediately. That would be my advice.
That's really good.
Because it's like for some people, like a detox.
It's interesting.
Just like social media,
It's interesting to me what you're describing as a false god. I haven't. So total sidebar. We're not going to go down this road, but I did. Man, it makes me wonder how much of the beast, the false prophet, this whole thing is like this kind of intelligence over here. Anyway. It's pretty interesting.
AI got an
I don't know, but I wonder.
Yeah,
I think too with AI, you're robbing your friends of being there for you. If you're going there with your emotions and like trying to journal there, that sort of thing, which I did when it first came out. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I can have someone kind of explain back to me what I'm feeling. And what I realized was, oh man, I'm kind of robbing my friends of getting to use their gifts with me and comfort me the way that they used to. And it just kind of like created for me, I thought, oh, I'm doing my work, and now I know the why behind my feelings, and I can clean myself up and be great for everybody. But my friends who want to give help or attention or comfort or know me, like, are robbed of that when I go.
But you're also robbed.
Yes.
Because you're not
100%.
having a real encounter with a human who is themselves flawed and makes the interaction more difficult. It's like because it's in the roughness and the difficulty that I think challenges you and forces maturity. Yeah, and risk as well. Like there's all of this strength that you will not gain and maturity that you will not. It's through hardship and resistance. It's like saying, to me, AI is like an emotional diet pill. Like I don't have to do the work. I can just bypass all of that, because all it's really going to do is affirm you and make it easy on you. And you don't need that. Ultimately, you do need the struggle, and you do need the fact that your wife isn't responding to you in the way that you want right now. Like, I'm glad that these difficult interactions happen. They force me to like return to the Lord. They force me to think about myself. They force me to try different things. It's like I don't see any pathway to maturity or strength through taking the path of least resistance, which is what I think it offers.
We so want to hear that we are right. Like, think about the last time you've done something, said something you shouldn't, maybe you flew off the handle or whatever. If you don't deal with that immediately for days, you're just like, well, but here's why I did it. You're making all these excuses for why it happened. And you can analyze, well, but that's a trigger for me because my childhood, like, you can make all these excuses. We are all too quick to absolve ourselves. And like, I just feel like AI is going to give you what you want to hear more than,
I think for me, an avoiding of feeling any of these feelings on the chart was trying to figure out why I was feeling them. And I know that actually can be helpful for people. But for me, it was a way to not ever have to feel them, is to like, why? It kind of intellectualize it a little bit. And that's why, an AI looking at it and going like, this is why you're feeling that, then you never have to feel it, and you're very guarded from it. Now I've kind of rationalized my way through this enough to where I never have to feel it.
That's really good.
But you do feel it.
You do feel it. Because if the feeling is there, an indicator of a need, it's getting your needs met.
Yes.
In a place other than God and others.
That's really what we're talking about is learning. This is a key idea, learning to trust the Lord with your feelings.
Yes.
Fear, think about it.
Yeah.
Hurt, sadness, loneliness, anger, shame, guilt, gladness, learning to take those things to the Lord and entrust Him with them. Like, that's really the game. That's what that's what relationship with Him is about. And that's what this whole that's what I love about this, is like learning either through His Word, His church, and His Spirit to turn these feelings back into relationship.
Yeah.
Question, how would you do that? We have all of this over here. We have relational need that's listed over here. If I'm feeling fear, what I need is help, refuge, protection. Or if I'm feeling hurt, I need attention. If I'm feeling sadness, I need comfort. But any practical wisdom from either of you on, okay, maybe I can begin to recognize, like what I was describing, I'm feeling sad, and that kind of inward treasuring of my sadness leading to self-pity and all of it. Like, what would be a practical way to just like break? Is it as simple as just sitting down and having a conversation? Okay, I'm feeling fill in the blank. Is that all that needs to happen? What do we do?
So it could be done in a conversation with another person. That's the right person, and we can talk about who the right person might be. But as we're sitting here talking, I'm thinking about a way that I have. It's a practice that I've started doing around, and I've been doing it for several years now, but I do it in a journal, and I'll sit down in the morning, and if I had something happen the day before that I didn't understand why I felt anxious or why I felt uncomfortable, I'll get up that morning, and usually that feeling is still with me in some ways. It doesn't just like all of a sudden poof go away, but I get curious about it and acknowledge that that's what I was feeling, and I'll open up my journal. I spend time in prayer and scripture every morning, and then sometimes I start with this. If I cannot kind of move on from the feeling, I will write it down. I'll write down the whatever happened surrounding that experience. So who I was with, maybe what was happening in my day, just any kind of circumstances that were going on, kind of starting to ask questions about what it is. And the cool thing about it is that when you write down, when you journal, it helps get you away from that like logical linear place to a more like relational place. So similar to what music would do, writing rather than typing actually is really good for accessing that part of your heart.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I have actually found that I can't really type my thoughts and feelings very well, but I can write them down with my hand.
Well, and think about when you were writing for the gentleman who passed away in your life. There was something that did that gave you access to,
definitely.
Now I feel sad.
Yeah.
So I would double down on that. If it wasn't for journaling, like I went through a really hard year in 2024, and it's like that was my morning food, was to open it up and go, there's such a storm here. I'm just writing, because you don't have to edit. You're just sitting there. You're just getting whatever it is out. For me, that is how I hold up what is actually going on in my heart. It isn't just always just readily there. It's like I just start writing and see where it goes.
I think for men, so like I would say, it may be that regular daily journaling. For me, it's kind of occasional. But I know sort of when, like my journal is filled with like thoughts around verses themselves, things I need to write down, and then a page of feelings, and then back to, like that's how and honestly, this is how I write sermons too. It's like, what I've found is that your thoughts and feelings are often vague and unknown to you. They're behind a veil. They're there. It's like you can feel their presence and maybe even some sense of what's going on. But I have been blown away at how the act of just beginning to write, and you might say, I don't really know what to write. You just start writing. Like formulate one sentence and see what happens. You'd be blown away at what happens. What I have found is that writing one sentence triggers another one and another one. And before you know it, you have like a page or two.
Yeah.
And it may take a little bit of development to kind of access. But for me, it's not like, I don't do that daily, but I do it occasionally.
I would say the same for me. Like I don't write
seasonal.
daily. It is seasonal based on what I need. So I'll sit down and I'll write all that out, but it does. So I've noticed that there's a pattern in my writing. So I'll write how I'm feeling, what's going on. A lot of times I'll start with exaltation, like to confess Jesus Christ as Lord. And so I go with that like kind of foundational understanding that Jesus, I'm coming to you. And there will be some type of worship in that. And then I'll say,
you're writing out.
Yeah, that I'm literally writing out.
Love it.
And then I'll write out bring out what's in my heart before the Lord. And then I will sit for a while and I'll acknowledge the presence of God with me. And this is like, there's a little bit of a technique here, but God is with you, and he was with you when whatever happened. And so if you think about that, you invite the Lord's presence into that, and he's with you, and he would say, I was with you when that person said that thing to you. Yeah. I was with you in the room. And this is similar to the story you told this weekend. Yeah. And I'm with you here right now. And so I will just simply stop and wait for the Lord to speak. Interesting. And it'll be a verse typically. Yeah. I'll ask the Holy Spirit to remind me of truth. Yeah. And actually I have to back up, because before that happens, I ask myself, what is the story that I'm telling myself? Yeah. Because there is a story attached to every feeling.
Remember, okay. Yes. So let's talk about this, because I got into this last week when I was talking about this with some of the pastors on staff. Really helpful phrase, especially in talking feelings out with a spouse, a child, because what they don't know is all of this narrative that's going on behind the scenes for you, that is the context with which you are bringing this feeling or whatever to them. And I think it's super helpful to just start a sentence like, the story I've been telling myself is, so like, let's go down this road. You text a friend or you text someone and that you care about. Maybe you admire, maybe you respect. I'll give you a story about this maybe. They don't text you back. You hear nothing. A narrative begins to form. We've talked a little bit about this. So I'll give you another story involving John Tyson. Poor John has no idea. I met him in 2018. We went to New York. Now, keep in mind, I'd become pastor at Church on the Move in 2017, and it's not going well. I'm not like completely failing, but the church is declining. It's pretty obvious to everyone. Other churches in our city are blowing up, and everybody's talking about them, and people are leaving to go to that church and this and that. I'm just feeling like a loser, roughly. Not like, I'm not a big woe is me guy, but just like, if I guess my self-confidence is rocked, where I came into this thinking I'm going to crush it. It's not happening. And I'm a little bit insecure. So we go to New York and to see Tyson's church. I can't even remember how I became aware of it, but they're doing a church in New York and I want to see it. And because we were going to do this whole church in Midtown, which we ended up doing, and then became YA. Doesn't matter. I meet John after a service. I walk up to him. He's in the lobby by himself. He just preached, and I happened to go out there, and I saw him. I'm like, so I go and introduce myself, and we had a chat, and I'm sure he was as nice as could be, but my emotions were just such that I read that whole thing as, he doesn't care about me. He's this big-time dude in New York. I'm this loser pastor in Tulsa. He doesn't care about me. And I go to my wife and Brian and Jamie, and I'm just like, that night I'm like, that was nothing. We'll never have a relationship with him. He doesn't care anything about us. He's like, I'm not big deal enough for him. And I'm just like, I'm wallowing in self-pity. What's amazing is when he came this last week, it's like the next time I see him, he's like, we met in 2018. I remember talking to you. And I'm like, he remembered it. And I didn't tell him any of this. If I have more interactions,
we can send him this clip.
What's interesting is this is a perfect example, because it's the story I'm telling myself is, I'm not that important, and you didn't care that much about me. It doesn't even matter whether he just got through preaching, for crying out loud. Like, it could be a host of things to determine whether or not I experienced his personality as warm or inviting or open or whatever. He wasn't rude to me by any stretch of the imagination. I just carried in what I was already feeling into that interaction, and then I read into it those feelings and then just assigned it to him. And so, like, our relationship, if you will, is already like, it's off on the wrong foot, because I'm telling myself this whole story. And it's down to emotions of fear of failure, of you're not good enough, all the insecurity, whatever all those things are, that probably needed to be taken to the Lord. And a lot of this journaling, like, Lord, I'm trying and it doesn't seem to be working, blah, blah, blah. Where are you right now? It feels like we're failing, headed in the wrong direction. Little did I know what the Lord would do. But at that point, I'm kind of floundering in all of this and trying to mask it probably with a bit of self-confidence and projecting out in front of people this, I'm strong, I got this, blah, blah, when I don't. But that's how that plays out in relationship. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And so, for me, writing down the story that I'm telling myself gives the Holy Spirit the opportunity to tell me the right story and to reframe the story in the right way. And so, and to receive truth into that space.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when we're experiencing pain or hurt, I think what happens is we receive lies into that space rather than truth.
And the enemy is so good at suggesting
He's
those.
so good at it.
He doesn't, they don't, you know, in this case, it's like he doesn't care anything about you.
Exactly.
But that happens. You text somebody, they don't text you back. They're mad at you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's this whole, and now you're searching through interactions. Well, there was that. I mean, maybe they took that the wrong way. And now it's all, like you're trepidatious, you're nervous.
How do I work my way back into this person's good graces? What do I need to do? What do I need to say?
And unbeknownst to you, it's not even on their mind. They just didn't get the text.
It seems like this is such a process.
Yeah.
Because like you may not have had all the insight you have today over what the Lord was showing you about that season. I mean, there's stuff the Lord has shown me about seasons from 20 years ago that there's still fruit coming out of what he was doing in that season. But it is a process. And I think that's one of the things that have been a great help to me is that just because I've identified the feeling and written it, and just because I've seen the truth, just smashing it together doesn't make it so. It's a process of how God has counseled my heart through something. So let's just take unforgiveness as just an example. Someone did something, it was hurtful. For a while, a week, 2 weeks maybe, I'm writing about this pain. It is a deep cut. I'm writing about that pain. I want to forgive them. I want to let that go very soon. And I mean, we're months into this process of this hurt, moving through it. I'm processing it with the Lord. I'm no longer holding this person accountable. I'm learning to see their side of it. I'm learning to feel empathy for them. But I'm still also learning to take hold of this new truth, and it's still coming up a lot in my mind. Then it became, okay, Lord, I'm still ruminating on this hurt. It's time for me to now do something about it. We've talked about it. We've processed it. I've let this person off the hook. It doesn't make the pain go away, but we're still working through it now. And now every time I ruminate about it, I immediately change. I'm like, okay, it's time to tell a new story. So for me, it just seems like it's such a process. I thought in some ways that like if just to know the truth should be enough to like put the devil in his place, I guess, to some way. But like you have to work through it. It's a process.
I really love what you're saying because I see this, particularly in this issue, but I could see it applying to others. That the feelings of hurt and unforgiveness, what happens a lot of times is we just spiral downward, and our feelings cause us to withdraw from community and relationships that we desperately need, but maybe because there's a proverbial rock in your shoe, something that's hurting you, and we may think about it, we may talk about it with someone, but we're not actually dealing with it because we're not trusting the Lord with it. So like there's a difference, in other words, from like with what I did around this whole deal with John Tyson. Like I could talk to Brian and Jamie and Heather about it, but that's not really trusting the Lord with those feelings. Thankfully, by the way, that night at dinner, I was just kind of in a bad mood about it. And Brian just, in his way, was just like, yeah, your read on this is probably completely wrong. And I mean, however he said it, but it's like, it kind of angered me, quite frankly, but he was right. But still, I'm not actually because I'm not bringing my insecurity. I'm not trusting the Lord with the deeper thing, which is the insecurity. This is causing pain, but it's really causing pain because I'm already really insecure. It's touching on a sort of open wound that I haven't processed. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's one thing to go, can you believe let me tell you what they did. Oh, let me tell you about this guy. He did this and he did this. And that's not processing a feeling. That's just churning up the hurt and justifying your actions. That happens all the time. Well, I just don't even want to be around that place. I don't want to be near them because that guy did this. And that's not going to the Lord and saying, Lord, I have this against a brother. He has done this to me. Here's what it feels like. And allowing like self-examination and then figuring out how can I trust you with this thing that's happened? Because ultimately what you want, like, I want to make it right. I want revenge. I want him to pay. I want him to suffer, whatever the case may be, right? We feel all of these things. But what you're describing is like working through that to where you're working back toward relationship, whether you actually ever get
toward reconciliation
or not.
Like it wouldn't have been good for me to jump into a conversation with that person as the first thing of me going, let's get this out. Not a good idea. I have needed space to be counseled in my heart. And I just feel like, what is it to have integrity? It's like, what is God actually doing in my heart? I can say, we've forgiven that person, but truly there was still the effect of what happened. And forgiveness is its own topic itself, but just thinking about the way the heart is and emotion, it's like there's just things I've had to keep coming around and circling to. And then when it was time, change my thought process about it. Like, hey, that's not the story that I'm telling anymore. I have to do something about it. And you led to that in your message this week. It's like, when is it time to now direct myself? I haven't ignored the feeling. I've spent time with it. I've brought it before the Lord. But there came a time where it's like, I feel like I'm dipping into sin by continually to
obsess over this. Sure.
It was time for me to move forward and do something. Like, okay, every time I think about that person, I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to change what this rumination is and make it something that honors God.
So I like what you're saying here, because what we're describing is that not every feeling is going to be choose the right action and it goes away. Right. Or you're like, some of these are going to be, it's going to take a while.
Especially if it's a rut that you've been thinking that story for a period of time.
Yeah.
Like you may need to be meditating on the love of God and his acceptance of you and your belonging with him for a year.
Yeah.
For 2 years. Like that may be the background music that you need to be swimming in for a while.
Yeah, just depending on how deep the wound is and how far back it goes and all of that kind of thing. It could take a while. Ultimately, there ought to be, I really firmly believe this, there has to be an other side.
Yes.
This isn't just park here and live wounded.
Agreed.
But we're moving to the other side. And depending on the depth of the wound and how significant it is, there may be a longer journey to get toward that healing. But I firmly believe, and I think we ought to hold on to this belief, that healing is possible.
Yeah.
I can get there.
That is why there is I think it's interesting that there's a gift on the other side of these feelings on this chart.
Yes.
You aren't supposed to stay there.
Yeah.
That's not the intent. It is supposed to be a journey that you would move towards whatever gift that feeling has to offer, but it does require this process. And it does require what Chip Dodd would say is a willingness to open yourself up to the possibility of a new outcome. So a willingness to hope, a patience with that hope, a willingness to wait in hope. Also it's his little equation. It's a W, willingness, P, patience, W, work. So the work is, in the meantime, I'm willing to invest myself in things that matter, even if the resolution hasn't come yet.
Yeah.
And then there's just the passage of time. I'm not going to detach. I'm not going to disconnect. I'm not going to spend all my time on social media. I'm going to be present in the moment. Wow. And the outcome of that is what the gift of these feelings is. And so I'll go over it again just because that was a lot. It's the willingness to hope again, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of hurt, or loneliness, the willingness to hope that there is a resolution on the other side. And then there's patience, which patience is just willingness to wait under the burden of hope, and to not move. Like I've taken my place on the wall and I'm watching. The Lord is coming over the hill for me. And then there's the work, the investing yourself in something that matters, which is reminds me of, oh my gosh, what's his name? He talks about satisfaction, meaning, and joy. Who is it? We've talked.
Andy Crouch?
No. Oh my gosh, you are
Alice
gonna.
Willard.
No, it's the Arthur Brooks.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that willingness and that work doesn't mean that necessarily it's a vocation where you're getting paid money for it, but you're investing in things that matter, family relationships, and then the willingness to be present and not throw away time, but receive time as an opportunity to experience all of these things, and the outcome is faith and wisdom, healing and courage, acceptance, intimacy, passion. And so a lot of people, when they're feeling their feelings, if they start crying, they're like, am I ever going to stop?
Yep.
And it's, you will.
Yeah. Will I always be this way?
You won't.
Will I ever? Yeah.
Yeah. If you're willing to open yourself up to the possibility that God is for you, He's never going to leave you or forsake you, and the fulfillment of relationship that you long for and desire, the way that you desire to be seen, you one day will be. You will be known as you will know as you are deeply known.